Hi, welcome back to Revenge Fire. My name is Maya Collins. I'm 29, I live in Austin, Texas, and I work as a paralegal at a mid-size firm downtown. That job has made me one thing above all else precise. I track deadlines for a living. I read the fine print nobody else wants to read. I notice when something doesn't add up, and I write it down. So, when my cousin Diane called me on a Tuesday afternoon in early October, voice cracking in that specific way that means a favor is coming, I already felt the small, familiar knot forming in my stomach. I answered anyway. That's the thing about family. You answer anyway. She said she and her husband Derek had hit a rough patch. Their landlord had decided to sell the building, and the new owner wasn't renewing month-to-month leases. They had 30 days and nowhere to go. Their son, Brandon, was 22 and had been living with them since dropping out of community college the previous spring. Could they stay with me? Just for a few weeks, she said. Just until they found something. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor. The 2nd bedroom was meant to be my office. I'd spent 4 months making it exactly right. The desk facing the window. The bookshelf organized by case type. The small lamp I'd bought with my first paycheck at the firm. I looked at that room for a long time after I hung up. Then I folded up the extra chair, pushed the desk against the wall, and told Diane yes. What I didn't tell her was what that room was really for. I'd been saving for 2 years toward a down payment on a house. Not a big one. Just something that was mine, with a yard and a door that locked only when I wanted it to. My mom had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes the previous year, and her insurance had gaps in it the size of canyons. Every month, I set aside a fixed amount for her prescriptions and any copays that came up. I had a spreadsheet, I had a plan, and I had $9,100 sitting in a savings account that I thought of as a living, breathing promise to myself and to her. I didn't explain any of that to Diane. I just said yes, and bought an air mattress. They arrived on a Friday evening with more bags than I expected and less cash than I could have imagined. Derek had a tight handshake and a habit of scanning every room, like he was estimating what things cost. Brandon carried a gaming setup I recognized, because I'd seen the ads. It wasn't cheap. He set it up in my office without asking. That first night I told myself that was fine. He'd had it before he came. It wasn't my business. The first week, I felt something I hadn't expected: company. Diane and I had been close as kids, before her family moved out of state and holidays became the only time we saw each other. She knew how to make me laugh. She remembered the stupid things from childhood that nobody else remembered. Derek was quieter than I'd expected, mostly watching TV in the evenings or walking out to the parking lot to make calls. And Brandon mostly stayed in the room, which was easier than I thought it would be. Then the second week started. The grocery bill came first. I'd been doing my own shopping for years, and I knew exactly what my cart looked like: some produce, some proteins, the specific brand of oat milk I'd spent months finding that didn't taste like paper. The first time I shopped after they arrived, the total was almost double. I didn't say anything. I swiped my card and carried the bags upstairs and told myself it was temporary. The utility app notification came 3 days later. My electricity usage had jumped 40%. Brandon's monitors ran all night. Derek liked the thermostat set colder than I did, and when I gently mentioned it, he said he had a bad back and the heat made it worse. Diane started cooking meals that required the oven for 2 hours at a time, which I didn't mind, except that cooking dinner somehow never translated into washing the dishes. I started working an extra hour at the office before coming home, just to delay the moment of walking through my own front door. By the end of the 3rd week, I'd used my card 4 times for things that weren't mine. A streaming service upgrade Brandon wanted, a prescription copay. Diane said she'd pay back at the end of the month. 2 DoorDash orders that appeared when I hadn't ordered anything. I brought it up gently each time. Diane would say, of course, I'll sort it out." Derek would nod without making eye contact. Brandon wouldn't look up from his screen. The one time I asked Brandon directly about the DoorDash charges, he shrugged and said he thought it was fine because I'd told him to help himself to anything in the fridge. I had said that about the fridge, not about my card. I told him that, and he said, "Oh, I must have misunderstood," and went back to his game. Diane patted my arm and whispered, "He doesn't think before he acts. He never has. You know how it is." I did not know how it was. But I let it go. Here is what I didn't know at the time. The month before they moved in, I had placed one grocery order online and let Diane pay me back through the app on my phone. When she typed in her card info and saw my saved card on the screen, I hadn't thought anything of it. I had not invited her to remember the number. But she had a very good memory, and so did her son. On a Thursday night, 3.5 weeks into their stay, I was in bed by 10 because I had a 7 a.m. filing deadline. I had just closed my eyes when my phone buzzed. I assumed it was a calendar reminder. I reached for it without sitting up and looked at the screen. It was my bank app. A purchase notification. $312. At an electronics retailer online. Placed 11 minutes ago. I sat up. I opened the app. Below that charge, there were two more. One for $189 at a sneaker site, one for $94 at a streaming platform I had never heard of. All three within the last hour. All three on my checking account card, not my savings. I held the phone in both hands and stayed very still for a moment. Then I kept scrolling. Going back 4 days, there were charges I hadn't looked at closely because I'd been exhausted all week and assumed they were mine. A charge at a fast food place I never went to, a charge at a gaming key site, a subscription renewal for a service I'd canceled 6 months ago. Further back, another electronics purchase. A clothing order with a delivery address that was this apartment. Items I had never touched. By the time I got to the bottom, the number was $7,200. Not a small mistake. Not a misunderstanding. $7,200, gone in 4 days, most of it in the last 72 hours, as if someone had realized the window was closing. The savings for my mom's next specialist visit. The buffer that stood between me and a very bad month. Gone. I did not wake them up. I know that seems strange, but I've worked in legal long enough to know that the worst thing you can do when you find evidence is blow it up before you've secured it. I sat at my kitchen table with the lights on low, and I opened my laptop and I did what I know how to do. I documented everything. Screenshots of every charge, timestamps, descriptions, amounts. I cross-referenced what I could against the emails I found in my sent folder confirmations that had been forwarded to an address I didn't recognize, which turned out to be Brandon's. My delivery address on 2 of the orders. My billing name. It took me just over an hour to build the full picture. Then I opened my bank's dispute portal, and I flagged every charge I hadn't authorized, one by one, with notes attached. I didn't call anyone. I didn't send any texts. I closed every app and account I had that was accessible from a saved device on the apartment Wi-Fi. I changed every password. I removed my card information from every shopping platform and revoked all secondary access. By 1:45 the morning, the pipeline was closed. Then I went back to bed. Not to sleep. I'm not going to tell you I slept. But I lay in the dark with my phone face down, and I let myself breathe for a few minutes, because the morning was going to require everything I had. I heard it at 8:20 a.m. while I was drinking coffee in the kitchen. A sharp, frustrated noise from the back bedroom, the kind someone makes when technology isn't doing what they want. Then footsteps. Brandon appeared in the kitchen doorway in a hoodie and sweatpants, squinting at his phone like it had personally disappointed him. "Hey, did you change the Wi-Fi password?" he asked, not bothering with a good morning. "I updated a few things on the account last night," I said. He made a face. "Can you give me the new one?" "I'm in the middle of something." I looked at him. "No." He blinked. That was clearly not the answer he'd expected. "What?" "I'm not sharing the network right now," I said. "There's some stuff I need to sort out first." He stared for a second, then huffed and pulled out his phone. A minute later, Diane came into the kitchen looking for the creamer I'd stopped buying the week before. When I handed her the regular milk instead, she glanced between me and Brandon, and must have sensed something, because she asked quietly if everything was okay. "It will be," I said. "Can you ask Derek to come out too? I'd like us all to sit down before I leave for work." She did. Derek arrived last, looking like he'd slept badly, which maybe he had. The three of them arranged themselves on the couch and the armchair, and I sat across from them at the kitchen table with my laptop open and my notes printed out on 4 pages in front of me. I told them I had spent the night going through my bank statements. I told them I'd found $7,200 in charges I didn't make, placed from devices on my network, delivered to my address, confirmed to Brandon's email. I set the printed pages on the coffee table and pushed them forward. Diane's face went through 5 different things in about 3 seconds. Derek looked at the pages without picking them up. Brandon looked at the ceiling. "That's a huge number," Derek said finally. "Are you sure that's not a glitch? Banks make errors." "I have the confirmation emails," I said. "Order numbers, item descriptions, Brandon's account name on the sneaker site." Diane picked up the pages. Her hands were not entirely steady. She looked at the first page for a long moment. Then she looked at her son. Brandon shrugged with his whole body, a kind of rolling gesture that somehow contained no acknowledgement of anything at all. "I was going to tell you," he said. "I just hadn't gotten around to it yet." "Gotten around to it," I repeated. "It's not like I was trying to steal from you," he said, still looking somewhere past my shoulder. Things are stressful. You don't know what it's like to be my age right now, and feel like everybody else is moving forward, and you're just stuck. Those things, the gear, the kicks, I just wanted to feel like I had something, you know? Like I was doing okay." I heard those words land. I noticed they were supposed to make me feel something soft. They didn't, but I kept my face still. Diane set the papers down. "Maya, I am so sorry. This is not okay, what he did. I want you to know that." She looked at Derek. "We'll pay it back. We will absolutely pay it back." Derek nodded once. "Whatever he spent, we'll figure out a repayment plan." "I appreciate that," I said. "I want to talk about that. But first I want to make sure we're all understanding what happened here." I looked at Brandon. "You saw my card number from a transaction you were near. You remembered it. And over 4 days you spent $7,200 of my money without asking me." "I said I was going to tell you," he said again, quieter this time. "When someone says they're going to tell you, they usually tell you before the charge is clear," I said. "You didn't. And now I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with." Derek leaned forward. "Look, we hear you. This is serious and we're not dismissing it. But the way you locked everything down this morning without a conversation that felt extreme. Brandon has issues, yes, but we're still your family. You could have come to us first." I took a breath. "Derek, I came to all of you 3 times in the past 2 weeks about charges that weren't mine. I was told each time that it was a mix-up or that it would be sorted out. Nobody sorted anything out. By the time I found the full picture last night, I needed to stop the bleeding before I documented and disputed. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting myself." Diane's eyes were filling up. "I feel terrible," she said. And I believed her. "I really do. I didn't know it was this much." "I know," I said, "because I did. And because Diane's guilt was real, I softened my voice a little, but knowing and not knowing doesn't change what the account looks like. I need this to be taken seriously." Brandon finally met my eyes. "So what? You're going to report me?" "That depends on what happens next," I said honestly. There was a silence in the room that was different from the silences before it. Heavier. He heard something in my voice that finally landed the way it needed to. I told them I wanted to have a full conversation that evening, after I got back from work. I told them I wasn't going to make any decisions before then. I told Brandon that in the meantime, I was going to reach out to every retailer I could and initiate returns or chargebacks on anything that was still within the return window, and that anything recovered would go directly back to my account. I wasn't asking permission. Brandon's jaw went tight. "Those are my things. They were purchased with my money," I said. "Without my consent. That makes them my things." He pushed back from the table and went back to the room without another word. I got to work 20 minutes late, which I never do. I sat in the parking garage for a few minutes before going in, hands on the wheel, taking long, slow breaths. Then I went upstairs and did my job. Because the bills still existed and the deadline was still at 7 the next morning, and none of that had changed. On my lunch break, I called 3 retailers. The electronics order, a mechanical keyboard, and a secondary monitor was within the return window. The rep processed it without any drama when I explained that the purchase was unauthorized and I had documentation. The sneaker site was more complicated, but when I mentioned I had a case number from my bank's dispute team and was prepared to submit formal fraud documentation, they approved the return. A clothing order went the same way. By 2 in the afternoon, I had recovered just over $3,800 in pending refunds. The gaming subscription keys were non-refundable. Some of the food delivery charges were already closed. There was a concert ticket purchase that had a no-refund policy. Not all of it was coming back, and I knew that going in. But $3,800 returning to my account by the end of the week was real, and I held on to it. I got home at 6:15. The air in the apartment was quiet in a watchful way. Diane had made dinner, which I appreciated. We sat at the table, all 4 of us, and I waited until everyone had eaten before I opened the folder I'd brought home. The folder had 3 things in it: a printed account summary with the full damage laid out, a list of what had been recovered and what hadn't, and a 1-page document I had typed up on my lunch break that I thought of as the terms, though I didn't call it that out loud. I told them what I'd recovered. I told them what the remaining gap was, just under $3,400 after refunds, and the dispute still being processed. Diane said they would pay it back. She said it clearly, without Derek prompting her, and she looked at Brandon when she said it. He stared at his plate. "I need to know that's a real plan," I said. "Not an intention, a plan." Derek said they could do $200 a month starting the following month. I looked at him. "That's 17 months, I said. "I need something faster." He spread his hands. "Maya, we're not in a position to." "Then I need Brandon to be in a position," I said, turning to look at him directly. "You're 22. There are jobs available within 2 miles of this apartment that don't require a degree. I looked them up this afternoon." I slid the second sheet across the table. I'd printed a list during my break, 12 listings. The hourly rate next to each one, hours per week they were advertising. I had circled 4 that had same week start dates. If you're bringing in income, the timeline changes. It can be manageable, but it has to be real. He looked at the list the same way I imagine people look at things they know they deserve and resent for that reason. "You really did your homework," he said. Not a compliment. "It's my job," I said. Diane picked up the list and looked at it. She handed it to Derek. "He'll apply," she said. "I'll make sure of it." "I'll hold you to that," I said. And then I told them the rest. I told them that nothing in the apartment was shared access anymore. No cards, no accounts, no streaming logins. If they needed something for the household, they came to me directly, and we discussed it. I told them that I needed the living situation to have an end date, not to punish them, but because open-ended arrangements had a way of drifting, and I needed to be able to plan. I gave them 45 days to secure somewhere to go, and I told them I would actively help. I knew a woman from my firm who managed rentals and sometimes had units available below market for people she vetted. I was willing to put in that call. Derek looked like he had several things to say, and was choosing between them carefully. Finally, he said, "I don't want you to feel like we took advantage of you, Maya." I looked at the folder. I looked at the 4 pages of charges. I looked at Brandon, who still hadn't said anything that resembled an apology. "I don't feel like it," I said. "I know it." Derek's jaw tightened. Diane pressed her hands flat on the table. Brandon finally looked up, and for a second I could see something behind the defensiveness, something younger, and more lost than he wanted anyone to see. Part of me registered it and felt something close to sad about it, because I did not think he was irredeemable. I just knew that he was not going to change inside my apartment, on my dollar, watching influencers from a setup he'd bought with my emergency fund. I told them I wasn't interested in anger, and I wasn't interested in punishment. I was interested in a path forward that worked for everyone in that room, including me. I told them that the 45 days was real, and the help was real, and the expectation was real, and that all 3 of those things were equally true at the same time. Diane cried a little. Derek thanked me in a way that was stiff but genuine. Brandon excused himself before I was done talking, which I noted and chose not to pursue right then. The next morning I went into work early and called my bank's fraud line to check on the dispute cases. The rep confirmed that all 7 disputes had been opened and that initial review was in progress, with a provisional credit possible within 72 hours. She asked if I wanted to flag the account for additional monitoring, and I said yes. Brandon applied for 2 jobs in the first week. I know because Diane told me, and because I checked one of the listings had a public application portal and his name was in the submitted queue. He got a call back from a warehouse distribution center by day 5. He didn't go to the orientation. He told Diane the hours were too early. By day 12, he had not started working anywhere. The list on the table had been moved to the kitchen counter, and at some point someone had used it as a surface to set a coffee mug on. Derek got an interview at a logistics company through a contact he'd found online. He went, came home, and said it had gone well but the commute would be brutal. He turned down the callback. When I asked why, he said the pay wasn't what he was worth. I didn't say what I was thinking. I just nodded and went to my room. On day 18, Diane came to my door in the evening and knocked softly. She sat on the edge of my desk chair and folded her hands in her lap, like someone preparing for something hard. She told me that Derek had found a potential sublet on the other side of town, sharing a 3-bedroom with 2 other people. She said it wasn't ideal, but it was something. She asked if I would still make the call to the woman from my firm about the rental leads. I picked up my phone right there and sent the text. My contact responded in 10 minutes with 2 addresses and a name to call. Diane exhaled like she'd been holding something in for days. I know this didn't go the way any of us wanted, she said. I'm sorry about that. I'm really sorry about Brandon. I looked at her. I could feel the old closeness there, the cousins, who shared a backseat and made up songs, closeness. It hadn't been destroyed, but it had been recalculated. I know you are, I said. I believe you. Are we going to be okay? She asked. I thought about it honestly. We're going to be something, I said. I don't know yet if it's the same something we were before, but we'll figure it out. She hugged me before she left, and it was a real hug, not a performance. I held on to that. Brandon apologized on day 23. It was a short apology, the kind that's more about ending a tension than owning the weight of something. But it was his voice saying the words out loud and looking somewhere in my direction while he said them, and I took it for what it was. I told him I heard him. I did not tell him we were fine, because we weren't, and I don't think he believed we were either. They were out by day 40, not 45-40. Diane found a furnished month-to-month near her sister on the other side of Austin. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. I helped her pack the kitchen stuff she'd brought, and we stood in the hallway for a minute after the last box was in Derek's truck. Thank you for not making it uglier than it had to be, she said. Thank you for not making me, I said. Brandon carried the last bag out without stopping. Derek shook my hand at the door. Then they were gone, and the apartment was mine again. I stood in the living room for a long time after the door closed, not doing anything. Just standing there, listening to the specific silence of a space that belongs only to you, the refrigerator hum, the distant traffic, the way every small noise sounds different when there's nobody else there to absorb it. I went to the back bedroom, my office, and I stood in the doorway. Someone had pushed the desk further into the corner than I'd had it. There were small scuffs near the outlet where the gaming setup had been. The lamp on the shelf had a fingerprint smudge on the shade. I went and got a cloth and I wiped the lamp first. Then I moved the desk back to where it faced the window. 2 weeks later, my bank closed the dispute cases. Between the disputes, the refunds, and a chargeback my credit card processed on the concert tickets after I submitted the fraud documentation, I recovered $6,550 out of $7,200. Not all of it. I accepted that the remainder was the cost of a lesson I hadn't expected to need. The following month I had enough in my savings account to schedule my mom's follow-up appointment with the specialist and pay the copay without checking my balance first. On the weekend after that, I drove out to a neighborhood I'd been looking at online for 2 years and walked around for an hour, just looking at houses with yards and doors that locked when I wanted them to. I didn't buy anything. That day wasn't the day. But I stood in front of one house, with a covered porch and a small oak tree in the front yard, and I felt, for the first time, in a long time, like the future was a place I was actually building, and not just protecting. A few months later, Diane texted me a photo of Brandon in a black shirt with a name tag. He'd taken a job at a distribution facility. The hours were early, she said. He complained about it, but he went. I texted back a single thumbs up and I meant it. People use phrases like she's going through a lot the same way they use kids, will be kids as a full sentence, a verdict, a reason to stop asking questions. As if hardship is a license, and family is a blank check, and the person holding everything together is just supposed to keep holding. I had absorbed that logic for years without realizing I'd absorbed it, until I sat at my kitchen table at 1 a.m. looking at $7,200 I'd saved carefully and watched it disappear because I'd made myself too easy to take from. I'm not hard. I'm not cold. I helped them find a place. I made the calls. I gave them 40 days and the framework of a way out. But I also filed every dispute and went to every retailer and got back what I could, because the money in that account was not abstract. It had to shape my mom's prescription, the car that got me to work, the future I was trying to build quietly and without fanfare, one paycheck at a time. That future is still there. It's just a little more protected now. And the door to my office faces the window the way I always meant for it to, and the lamp doesn't have a fingerprint on it anymore, and I think that's enough for today.